The email was short, barely a sentence. "I'm sorry. I can't make it in today. My kids haven't eaten since yesterday morning." Jade Walker had never missed a shift. Not once. She worked back-to-backs, holidays, overnight runs, the kind of employee you forget to notice because she never complains. Ethan Cole, CEO of Cortrans Logistics, stared at the message, unable to move on. His team told him it wasn't urgent, that HR could handle it, but something in that one line hit differently, like a crack in a wall he hadn't realized was hollow. So he packed a food box from the company pantry, borrowed an old delivery uniform, and typed her address into his GPS, said it was a surprise inspection for community outreach, but deep down, he needed to see it for himself. The street didn't even have sidewalks. The building leaned. The front door barely held its paint. When she opened it, she froze. And for the first time in years, Ethan wasn't a CEO. He was a man who'd built a kingdom without ever checking the ground it stood on. She didn't recognize him at first. The oversized hoodie, the baseball cap pulled low, the generic delivery bag slung across his chest. Ethan Cole had made sure he looked like just another gig worker on a route no one wanted. "Food box delivery," he said, his voice steady, low. Jade hesitated. Her eyes flicked to the logo on the bag, then to his face, then back to the hallway behind him. As if unsure whether to accept or run, behind her, a child coughed sharp, dry, the kind that sounded more tired than sick. She stepped aside slowly, allowing him in without a word. The moment he crossed the threshold, Ethan felt it. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was hollow. The apartment was dim, curtains drawn not out of comfort, but to keep out the cold. No furniture, no TV, a single mattress in the corner, laid directly on the floor, its blankets thin and frayed at the edges. Two children, wide-eyed and pale, peeked out from under them, then retreated when they saw him. "Thank you," Jade said, her voice barely audible. She took the box from his hands like it was glass. "We didn't expect it so soon." Ethan nodded, unsure of what to say. This wasn't supposed to be real. He'd imagined something hard. Yes, but not this. Not walls with chipped paint and cold air seeping through the window frame. Not a kitchen with two dented pots and no food on the counter. Not a woman still wearing her company badge, who had worked a double shift the day before, now standing here like she hadn't eaten either. He noticed her hand trembling slightly as she opened the box. She didn't reach for food. She started unpacking slowly. Sandwiches, apples, cartons of milk, and placed them neatly on the counter like stocking a shelf in a store. Behind her, one of the children whispered, "Is it okay to eat now?" Jade turned, smiled too quickly, and nodded. "Yes, baby, go ahead." And just like that, they moved. No hesitation, no mess, just hunger, managed like routine. Ethan's throat tightened. He was supposed to drop the box and leave, but now, standing in the middle of it all, the air felt too heavy to breathe. This wasn't an exception. This was survival, normalized, invisible. Until now, Ethan stood still, unsure whether he was intruding or witnessing something he was never meant to see. Jade didn't speak much. She moved quietly, methodically, like a mother who'd learned to conserve energy in every step. Her son, maybe 5, grabbed an apple and bit down so hard it echoed. Her daughter, a little older, opened a milk carton with both hands, careful not to spill a single drop. They didn't fight over the food. They didn't rush. They just consumed, like they knew exactly how much they could afford to eat and still have enough for later. Ethan looked around. No photos on the walls, no shoes by the door. The heat barely worked. It had to be under 60 degrees inside. The carpet was threadbare, and a single electrical outlet in the corner buzzed. Overworked from powering both a lamp and a space heater, he felt the weight of his own jacket, then how warm it was, how expensive, How absurd it seemed in this space. Jade finally broke the silence. "I didn't mean to sound desperate," she said softly, still facing the kids. "I just didn't know who else to tell." "You didn't," Ethan replied, his voice quieter than he expected. "You just told the truth." She turned to him, and for the first time, their eyes met fully. Her face was calm but not peaceful. It was practiced. The look of someone who'd learned to keep everything just below the surface. Someone who didn't cry because crying solved nothing. "I've picked up every extra shift I could," she said. "Night runs, weekend dispatch, warehouse rotation. I'm not lazy. I just can't keep up. He didn't doubt her. Her file came to mind, instantly flawless attendance. No complaints. Always available. The kind of name he'd skimmed past a dozen times in quarterly reviews. A name that had blended into spreadsheets. Until today. "We sleep here, eat when we can. I work when I'm not with them," she continued. "Childcare costs more than I make some weeks. I've applied for assistance, but the waiting list is 6 months long. So we manage." The word hit him hard. Manage. It sounded so neat, so controlled, but nothing about this place felt managed. It felt abandoned by systems, by promises, by people like him who assumed that a paycheck and a pat on the back were enough. "You shouldn't have to beg for help," Ethan said. Finally, she flinched at the word beg. "I didn't mean," he started. "I didn't think I was begging," she said, but her voice cracked. "I thought I was being responsible, letting someone know I couldn't make it in. I still feel guilty about sending that email." Ethan didn't know what to say. The apology instinct rose in his throat, but it felt too small, too safe. She looked at her kids, now curled up on the mattress, their hunger quieted but not solved. Then she turned back to him. "I'm not asking for pity. I just need to make it through the week. Then the next, that's how it goes." That's how it goes. That phrase, how many times had he heard it in meetings from managers trying to explain burnout, turnover, exhaustion? Now he finally understood what it meant. It meant choosing between gas and groceries, between sleep and a second job, between pride and feeding your kids. He took a slow breath, the stale air catching in his chest. He had spent his whole career optimizing routes, maximizing output, improving margins, but he had never optimized for people, never once asked what it cost them to keep his empire running. Until now. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat in his car outside Jade's building long after she had closed the door. The glow from her apartment barely visible through the cracked blinds. His hands gripped the steering wheel. But he wasn't driving. He was unraveling. Everything he believed about work, about fairness, about merit was splintering. He had always told himself the same story. You work hard, you rise, effort equals reward. That was the gospel he'd built his company on. But tonight, it felt like a lie. Jade had done everything right. She showed up, she pushed through, she stayed quiet, never asked for more, never took less than she earned. And still, she lived in a hollowed-out room with 2 hungry children and a job that barely kept the lights on. So what did that make him? He wasn't a villain. At least, he hadn't thought so. He paid above industry average, offered bonuses, ran employee of the month campaigns like they meant something. But now, those things felt like window dressing on a crumbling house. He remembered her voice. "We manage." It haunted him. Because in his world, managing meant shaving off seconds from delivery times or restructuring a route. In hers, it meant rationing dinner, skipping meals so your kids don't have to, hoping the heat stays on one more day. He thought of all the meetings he'd sat through, the performance metrics, the quarterly reports, the boardroom arguments about margins. He had never once asked, "Are my people okay?" Ethan looked down at his hands, manicured, clean. He thought of hers calloused, dry, fingers trembling as she unpacked that food box. He had built an empire, but somewhere along the way, he had forgotten to look down, forgotten that the weight of every shipment, every profit spike, every glowing press release was carried on the backs of people like Jade, people who never complained, people who never made it into the stories. Until now, by sunrise, Ethan was in his office. The city hadn't fully woken up, but he had, in a way he never had before. The skyline outside was the same. The spreadsheets on his desk still showed record growth, but everything felt different. He didn't review numbers. He didn't check emails. He picked up the phone, the line he only used for urgent decisions, and dialed. "Lisa," he said. As soon as his CFO picked up, "We need to talk. Now." She sounded groggy. "Is everything okay?" "No," Ethan replied. "And that's exactly why we're changing things." By the time she walked into his office, he already had a notepad full of scribbles, words circled in bold strokes. Wages, childcare, emergency support, retention, humanity. "We're restructuring the bottom," he said before she could sit. Lisa raised an eyebrow. "The bottom? The foundation," he corrected. "The people keeping this place upright while we pretend profit margins are everything." Lisa listened. She had worked beside him for over a decade. She'd seen him in crisis mode, in investor mode, in expansion mode, but this was different. This was conviction. "I want a company emergency fund. Accessible, anonymous, no red tape. I want a real wage floor, not minimums. Livable rates. I want childcare stipends, mental health support, and I want to do it now." Lisa blinked. "That's not a pivot. Ethan, that's a revolution." "Then let's start it." She hesitated. "The board won't like this. Investors. Let them not like it." He cut in. "If they want numbers, I'll give them numbers. The cost of losing good people, the price of rebuilding trust, the long-term gain of doing what's right." He leaned forward, voice sharp. "I've built this company on the backs of people who are burning out in silence. I saw it last night. I felt it." Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "But if we're doing this, we do it smart. We build the case. We face the board prepared." "I don't want a safety net," Ethan said. "I want a new floor." She cracked a smile. "Now that sounds like the Ethan I signed up for." He smiled back just slightly. But underneath, the fire had caught, and he wasn't going to put it out. The room was silent, heavy with polished wood and sharper glances. Ethan stood at the head of the table, hands flat against the glass surface, eyes moving from face to face. His board members sat stiffly in their leather chairs. Accustomed to profit projections, not policy revolutions, Lisa sat to his right, her expression unreadable but ready. "We're here to talk about people," Ethan began. "Not numbers, not growth curves, not shareholder dividends. People." Daniel Grant, their largest private investor, let out a quiet sigh. "Ethan, if this is about the internal memo from HR, this is about Jade Walker," Ethan said sharply, "and the dozens like her, working doubles, skipping meals, sleeping on floors." A murmur rippled through the room. Someone adjusted their tie. Another tapped a pen. "We pay competitively," Catherine said. "A veteran board member. We offer performance bonuses. These things happen. But they shouldn't happen." Ethan cut in. "Not here. Not on our watch." Daniel leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "So what's your proposal?" Ethan clicked the remote in his hand. A slide appeared behind him. No charts, no graphs, just 5 words in bold, white font. "Good workers, living in crisis." He turned to face them. "We create an internal emergency relief fund, increase base wages across departments, offer childcare stipends, mental health access, and we stop pretending that our job ends at payroll." Daniel scoffed. "That sounds like a non-profit. It sounds like leadership." Ethan shot back. Silence. Then, Daniel asked the question Ethan had expected. What happens when profits dip? When investors pull back? When margins get tight, do we lay people off to fund these ideals? Ethan didn't blink. Then I take the hit, or a beat. The room stiffened. You're saying Catherine asked, I'll cut my own salary, 70%. Effective immediately. You want commitment. Here it is. I'll bleed first. Even Lisa turned to look at him. Now genuine surprise flashing across her face. You're serious? Daniel said, his voice almost mocking. I watched a 5-year-old eat half a sandwich like it was gold. Ethan said, tell me again how I can justify 7 figures while that happens under my roof. More silence. Then, Catherine slowly leaned forward. You're asking us to believe in something that can't be measured on a balance sheet. No, Ethan replied. I'm asking you to remember that we didn't build this company alone. The vote didn't come easy, not unanimous, not even close. But when the final tally was counted, it passed, not because everyone believed in it, but because Ethan had reminded them what belief was worth. The notification lit up every company phone and screen at 900 aqama sharp. Live message from the CEO. No agenda, no press team, just Ethan, seated alone in the warehouse break room. No tie, sleeves rolled, hands folded in front of him like a man ready to confess something that had been sitting on his chest for far too long. Good morning, he began, voice steady but raw. If you're watching this, you work here, and that means you keep this company alive, not me. You, He paused, the silence deliberate. Most of you don't know me. You've seen my name on memos, maybe heard me speak once at an all-hands, but last night, I saw something that changed me. His eyes flicked to the lens. For once, there was no script. I received an email from one of our team members. It was one line, I can't make it in today. My kids haven't eaten since yesterday morning. Why? He let that settle. She didn't ask for money. She didn't complain. She told the truth, and that truth was enough to break something in me. A breath. I used to believe hard work always paid off, that if you just pushed harder, you'd make it. But I saw someone who's worked harder than most quietly, without fanfare, still stuck in survival mode. That's not failure on her part, that's failure on mine. His voice didn't waver, but his jaw clenched. So here's what's happening. Starting today, we're rolling out a new wage structure, we're building an emergency assistance fund, we're offering childcare support, and more. Not next year, not after another round of meetings. Now, He leaned forward, his voice dropping just slightly. And if you've ever gone home hungry, ever skipped a doctor's visit, ever smiled through exhaustion because you didn't have a choice, I see you. I'm sorry I didn't see you sooner. A beat. You won't have to do this alone anymore. The live stream ended there, no slogan, no applause, just a black screen and a moment of stunned quiet across every warehouse, truck cab, and office in the company. But in that silence, something shifted. Not policy, not protocol, something human. Later that night, Ethan stood by the same warehouse window where he'd once measured success in shipping volumes and arrival times. Now, all he could see were faces, not names on spreadsheets, not labor cost percentages, faces. Some tired, some hopeful, some just trying to make it one more week. The inbox in his phone was filling faster than he could read thank yous, stories, confessions, anonymous messages from employees who had never dared speak up. Some were heartbreaking, some were simple. You noticed, I thought no one cared. Now I believe I might stay. He didn't reply to all of them. He couldn't, but he read every word, and he made himself a promise. This wouldn't be a headline. This wouldn't be a moment of guilt dressed as generosity. This would be the new standard. He thought of Jade again, how she never asked for a raise, never made noise, never demanded the spotlight, She just kept showing up for her kids, for her job, for a system that had forgotten her. Not anymore. Because sometimes it only takes one person to crack the silence, one story to shift the ground, one line in an email that changes everything. Ethan closed his laptop and turned off the lights. The warehouse was quiet, but something had started, something real, and this time, no one would be left behind.